In football, there are big clubs. And then there is Real Madrid. Some clubs lift trophies. Some clubs dominate an era, but very few become the center of gravity of the entire sport. Because Real Madrid was never founded to be just another club. It was founded to sit at the top and to stay there. Over the last century, football changed from top to bottom. The rules changed. Generations came and went. Giant clubs rose and fell. But somehow, Real Madrid always remained standing, always remained part of the conversation. As the years passed, the definition of Real Madrid expanded. It was no longer just a club. It became a symbol, a business empire, a global obsession. Today, Real Madrid is a multi-billion-dollar brand. It has fans in nearly every country on earth. The biggest stars in football dream of wearing the white shirt, and the club has become something beyond mere existence, almost an inevitable part of football itself. But none of this happened by accident, because behind the trophies, the legends, the white shirts, and the packed stadiums, there was a long-term plan. A plan to turn an ordinary football club into the most powerful institution in the history of the game. A plan built on power, on prestige, and on mythology, from Alfredo Di Stéfano to Cristiano Ronaldo, from the rise of the Galácticos era to the billion-dollar age of modern football. This is the story of how one club took over the world. Let's go back in time. The 1950s, European football was not yet the global giant it is today. Back then, clubs had only one thing on their minds: their own leagues. Fan culture was strong, yes, but football had not yet become the global machine that pulls billions along with it. And it was during this era that Real Madrid started to see the game differently than anyone else. The truth the club had recognized was simple. Whoever controlled Europe's biggest stage would also control the future of football. That's why Real Madrid's goal was never just to collect good players. The real aim was to create a sense of superiority that generations would never forget. And the first concrete move in that vision was the signing of Alfredo Di Stéfano. Because Di Stéfano was no ordinary star. He was a player capable of shifting the very center of gravity of football on his own. With his arrival, Real Madrid started winning trophy after trophy in Europe. But the real story wasn't about the trophies. When people watched Real Madrid now, they weren't just watching a team. They were watching the summit of football itself. And that was exactly what the club wanted. Because once you take your place on the biggest stage in the world, the greatest players start coming to you on their own. The money starts flowing in your direction. And in time, the rest of the sport starts orbiting around you. By the time we reached the 1960s, Real Madrid was no longer just a winning team. They were now sitting right at the center of Europe's football map, because back-to-back European Cup victories had turned them into the most prestigious name in the game. In that era, for many players, a transfer to Real Madrid meant reaching the very top of football. The white shirts, the massive stadium, stars who could win even under the heaviest pressure. Real Madrid was no longer just a football team. It had started to look like the final level of football itself. But as the 1990s approached, the game began to change once again. It was no longer all about trophies. Television deals were growing, sponsorships were growing, and football was turning into a global entertainment industry. New giants were stepping onto the stage: Manchester United, AC Milan, and FC Barcelona. Real Madrid realized that history alone was no longer enough to stay on top. In the early 2000s, Florentino Perez stepped onto the scene and launched one of the most ambitious projects the game had ever seen. The goal was no longer to build a good team. The goal was to build the biggest football brand in the world. And to make it happen, the mega transfers began. First came Luis Figo, then Zinedine Zidane, then Ronaldo Nazario, and David Beckham. With those signings, Real Madrid was no longer just a football club. It was becoming the biggest sporting spectacle on the planet. The Galácticos era changed the course of modern football, because from that point on, greatness was no longer measured by trophies alone, but by how much of the world's attention you could hold in your hands. But despite all that fame, those staggering transfers, and the global spotlight, there was still one thing the club had longed for but could never quite hold on to: undisputed dominance. In Europe, the Galacticos era had turned the club into one of the biggest sports brands in the world. But that absolute supremacy on the pitch was still missing until 2009. That summer, Cristiano Ronaldo walked through the doors of Madrid, and the club began climbing to a whole new level. Ronaldo's meaning to Real Madrid went far beyond being just a star or a great footballer. He was the living embodiment of the mindset the club had been trying to build for years. A player who always wanted to win, who grew bigger under pressure, who demanded more of himself every single season. In the years that followed, Real Madrid began dominating the Champions League once again. Legendary remontadas, unforgettable nights. Trophy after trophy lifted into the sky. The club's psychological weight in Europe multiplied year after year. After a while, playing against Real Madrid had become more than just another match for many clubs. Because by now, the club didn't just have quality players, it had a massive winning culture running through its veins. 4 Champions Leagues in 5 years. Record-breaking revenues, hundreds of millions of fans across every corner of the world, and still the first address for football's biggest names. Real Madrid was no longer just a club. It had become one of the most powerful institutions in modern football. Looking at where we stand today, Real Madrid is still in the same place, right at the heart of football. But this isn't simply the result of the trophies they've lifted. Over the years, the club learned to play the game behind the scenes as well, and learned to turn it in their own favor. The money, the media, the culture, the global image. They mastered the art of managing them all. The renovated Bernabeu is no longer just a stadium, it's a revenue machine. Their social media accounts are no longer just followers, they are a sphere of influence. And every transfer is no longer just about adding a player to the squad. It's about writing the story the entire game talks about. The history of football is full of great clubs. Some left their mark on an entire era. Others shone briefly like a shooting star and then faded away. But the number of clubs that could carry the same weight across generations is remarkably few, because at a certain point, Real Madrid stopped being just a football team. It became one of the few forces that write the rules of modern football. And no matter how much the football world changes, Real Madrid still stands for the same 3 things: power, prestige, and global influence. So what do you think? Is it really the winning culture that makes Real Madrid so special? Or could Barcelona, Bayern, or Manchester United have achieved the same thing? Where does the club's real power lie? On the pitch or off it? Let's meet in the comments.